We complain all the time about how slow the wheels move in government, and this was quick.
Landline now, welcome back. It's been a very busy week in trucking news, so let's not waste any time getting to our two distinguished guests today for a rundown.
Where
you
are
know
they?
them. I was going to say, you know them, you love them. Tyson Fisher and Mark Schremmer of Landline Magazine, welcome to the show. You are one of the distinguished gentlemen,
okay.
Mark Schremmer. Good to see both of you.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
I want to start by looking at what happened in California this week because it's a big deal, and we may not be able to overstate just how big a deal this is. Tyson, we talked earlier this week about the mess involving the Advanced Clean Trucks rule in Oregon, and then just a few days later, we had California pulling the plug on its Advanced Clean Fleets rule there. Really a big win for trucking industry stakeholders, Tyson, worried about their business model, and it's been basically upended here.
Yeah, this is great news. Real quick, an overview of what Advanced Clean Fleets is. That would be basically an electric truck mandate for larger fleets and drayage operations. Larger fleets is any fleet with 50 or more trucks or annual revenues of more than $50 million. Basically, if you had like a truck of 60 fleets and you wanted to replace 5 of those trucks, those 5 trucks would have to be electric trucks or zero-emission trucks. Getting rid of the diesel trucks. That was supposed to go into effect last year, but the only problem was that CARB did not have the necessary waiver from the EPA. So we've been waiting on that all year, but then CARB said, well, we will enforce this retroactively, so you can buy a diesel truck, but if you do, when or if we get this waiver, we're going to take it away from you. Basically, we're going to have. So you had that looming all year round. So fast forward to December, and the EPA starts handing out waivers to California, including for advanced clean cars too, and the heavy-duty omnibus regulation. Noticeably missing was advanced clean fleets. So there's only 1 month left for the Biden administration EPA, and we all know the Trump EPA, no way they're giving away that advanced clean fleets waiver. So the question is, what's going to happen? Well, now we know. Basically, California waved the white flag and said, well, I mean, there's no way this is going to happen within the next 4 years. We're just going to, pull the plug. So advanced clean fleets is dead. It's effectively no more.
For now. I mean, who knows what happens in 4 years, I suppose.
Sure.
But for now, this is, the issue's dead in California, which, as we have talked about before, what happens in California often ends up happening in other states like Oregon, which we talked about earlier in the week. So this really is a big domino to fall. We're going to see a lot of these other things kind of fall by the wayside as well, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So that's the question is, like, where do we go from here? There are several federal lawsuits for advanced clean trucks, for example. There's 5 states implemented that this year, with another 5 states planning on implementing advanced clean trucks in next year and the year after. So more challenges to other emission regulations in California. But it's also worth noting that this kind of does complicate advanced clean trucks in California, because advanced clean fleets was seen as complementary to that. So, advanced clean trucks requires manufacturers to sell a certain percentage of their sales have to be zero-emission vehicles, right? Well, the idea was, if these larger fleets are forced to buy zero-emission trucks through advanced clean fleets, it kind of helps the advanced clean truck sales.
Yeah.
And so now you kind of eliminate. So it kind of complicates things. Again, this is still a good thing that advanced clean fleets is not going to be around, but it does complicate the larger picture of the suite of truck emission regulations in California.
Can I start a petition to have a different name for each of these? Because it gets super confusing when we've got advanced clean trucks and advanced clean fleets and who knows what else out there. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this plays out in the States. Again, with a new administration coming in, there's going to be less willingness to kind of push those things along. So we'll see how that goes in the coming months and coming years. I want to turn now to another thorny issue here. This is connected vehicles. We've talked about the security risks that are associated with them quite a few times here on the show. And the Commerce Department this week really fast-tracked a rule that would add some protections, but, and we're going to get to this in a moment here, Mark, but it's far from perfect. But just to begin with, what exactly, and it's pretty simple, what exactly is this rule going to do?
Yeah. So basically, connected vehicles, the different components, because I guess I'll back up for a second.
Yeah.
But, when you think about, vehicles and cars, they're not your dad's Oldsmobile, anymore. They basically are mobile computers, and it's what they are. And so some of the components, hardware and software on these vehicles are being created in China, Russia, and there's obviously concerns about that, cybersecurity concerns, national threat concerns, and risks. So that's basically what this is looking at. It is, putting a ban on those specific components from foreign adversaries is basically the way to look at it. As you mentioned and kind of alluded to, the bad part of it is the proposal had originally included trucks in it. And now when we see the final rule, because it was so fast-tracked, I think, because the comment period ended at the end of October, and for government to already have a final rule in mid-January, it's a huge quick turnaround for government. We complain all the time about how slow the wheels move in government, and this was quick. But the downside of that is I think they realize, as we often say, trucks are different than cars. You need to make those considerations. So they couldn't get to trucks. So they're planning on doing a separate proposal, separate rulemaking on trucks at a later date is what they said. But what also is really kind of concerning throughout that, they still mention that trucks cause grave risk and danger, of these connected vehicles. Because if you're talking about, terrorist threats or possibilities of that type of national security risks, obviously trucks
Can do a lot of damage.
Can do a lot of
Yeah.
damage. And the fact that they're waiting on that is concerning, and OIDA has said as much.
Yeah, I guess that's a question I have, and everything you said there makes sense, and I think the Commerce Department's stance on this also makes sense, but it begs the question, and you kind of raised it there, what does this mean for the commercial trucking industry when we're talking about connected vehicles? If it is so complicated, as you pointed out there, and the risk is, much higher, what does that look like? And we don't know the answer to that necessarily, but it's a big question that really does need to be answered. My fear is that, does it get pushed to the wayside here amid all the, transition period kind of stuff? Or
you don't know. If you remember back last time the Trump administration came in, it came in with that kind of rule of to bring in any new regulation, two need to go out, that type of thing. And also, which is common to put kind of a stop, maybe like a 60-day stop on anything that's coming through, or kind of a pause, which again, all makes sense with new people coming in. But yeah, if this is such a grave threat, is using the words that they have, this isn't something that I think you should be waiting on. And you would think that maybe these in reverse, that maybe they tackle the truck side of it first. I mean, Tyson did a story last year about how basically some professors at a college were able to do a study and hack into ELDs.
Colorado State University, and we talked with them as well.
Take advantage of the accelerator, and I mean, that stuff is scary. And you talk about hazmat loads and all different things. It's really scary, and hopefully something will be done about it soon.
We'll keep an eye on that. Another big story I want to turn to here was a federal court throwing out a trucking company's lawsuit that was challenging the Labor Department's new independent contractor rule. Tyson, you've been covering this story, another complicated one because we've got a ton of lawsuits out there, and this issue obviously is a big one. We should probably start with some background. Tell us exactly what this lawsuit was about and how it, I guess, played out here over time.
So the lawsuit challenged the new independent contractor rules at the federal level. So finalized last January 2024, the independent contractor standards, so who would be considered independent contractor. It replaced Donald Trump administration's, this first administration's 2021 independent rules. Basically, so it's kind of hard to get into the details, but just fairly quickly, it is more ambiguous. There's a lot more leeway with the definitions, whereas the 2021 rules were a little bit more concrete. So proponents of the new rule says it would it will solve the widespread issues of misclassification that we see at the ports all the time with port truck drivers. But opponents of the new rule say that this more ambiguous six-factor economic reality test will force employers to reclassify actual bona fide independent contractors as employees. That was the argument of Colt and Joe Trucking in their lawsuit, which basically said, because of these new standards, I have independent contractors. I don't know whether or not through this ambiguous standards, whether or not they're independent contractors. So they're just leaving. I don't, we have no recourse. I can't hire drivers because I don't know how this new rule is going to be applied. This is unconstitutional. That was their argument. But what the federal court ruled was just like, well, your harm, which is, that this rule might deem these drivers as independent contractors or employees. This is all speculation.
Right.
There has been no actual enforcement from the Department of Labor saying that these independent contractors are employees. Therefore, you have no standing. That's kind of what happened with that. And so so the federal court dismissed that lawsuit challenging this new independent contractor rule. As you pointed out, there are many lawsuits challenging this same rule. The one that is furthest along right now was also filed by another trucking company. So they asked for a motion for preliminary injunction while the litigation is ongoing. Federal court denied that motion. An appeal of that denial to that motion is ongoing right now. So that's where we're at. There's also been several lawsuits filed by freelance riders whose business model also, falls on independent contracting. So a couple of those one has been dismissed, another one's still pending. So there are at least 5 federal lawsuits challenging this rule. None have been successful. But here's the weird thing is this all may be a moot point because this 2024 rule rescinded Trump's 2021 rule. Well, who's coming in office this in a couple of days? Donald Trump. The question is, will he reinstate his rule? And then we're just back to where we were before, January of 2024. Yes, a giant mess.
Never a dull moment. But we'll keep an eye on that one as well. I do want to make sure here, we don't have a whole lot of time, but January 21st, we've talked about this before, the broker transparency comments. That's the deadline for getting them in. Mark, we'll keep banging this drum. If you haven't made a comment, do it.
Yeah, there's about 2,300 comments in, and the bad part about that is they've really kind of slowed down here lately. It was over 2,000 well over a week ago, and just not as many coming in. Obviously, 21st, as you mentioned, is the deadline. Really a push these last few days. Get those in. Tell them why broker transparency is so important to you as a truck driver, as a business, how it helps improve safety as well. And also let them know where maybe they fell short, or if there's some other things in the proposal that they didn't include that they should. You can do that really easily at regulations.gov or going to OOIDA's fightingfortruckers.com.
Yeah, that's the website to go to. The easiest way, I think, really is fightingfortruckers.com. As you mentioned it there, really a one-stop shop for kind of getting your word out there and making sure that your elected officials and everybody out there knows what a problem this is. Again, fightingfortruckers.com, landline.media. You can read Tyson and Mark's work on that website each and every day. And, of course, in every issue of Landline Magazine. Tyson, Mark, always good to see you. We'll talk to you again soon.
Hey,
been a pleasure.
Thanks.
Hey, thanks for watching. To stay up to date on the latest in trucking news, be sure to subscribe and hit that bell to be notified of new videos when they come out each week.